Willow Street, the Brem application.
Willow Street. Okay. All right, then the next item, this is the public hearing for EAC LLC, care of Hunter's Shop and Saves dash Sawyer LLC. This is at 50 and 60 South Main Street, tax map and lot 217-58 and 59. Case 2023-11. This is for a site plan review for a new grocery store. The first item is at the design review meeting, Planning Board member Roger Murray brought up the issue of the need for a special exception in accordance with Section 175-43, which is the non-conforming structures in the Westport, in the Wolfeboro zoning ordinance. I then, after that meeting, I asked Tavis to check with our attorney, and we have the attorney here tonight who is going to explain a little bit more about this issue.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. The chair has asked that I make a few preliminary remarks to sort of frame the issues that are going to be discussed here by the board this evening related to this application, and frame it really not only for the board but for the audience.
Walter, could you introduce yourself, please?
Yeah.
Pardon? Could you introduce yourself? Introduce yourself.
Oh, thank you, Paul. I'm Walter Mitchell. Our law firm is the Mitchell Municipal Group. My partner, Laura Spector Morgan, does a lot of the work with this planning board, but she had to be at another town this evening. So I'm pleased to be here. So the first category of questions that is before the board tonight is the merits of the application. And it'll be considered just like any other application by this board or before this board, and I have no further comment on that. The board knows how to address those things. If the board approves that the merits of the application, there's a second layer of question, and that is, does the language of the ordinance require this applicant to get a special exception to expand this building because the building is non-conforming to the ordinance? Our office has made a recommendation to the board as to how to interpret that, those provisions, but that's not our decision to make. That's a decision that the board makes. And if the board finds that a special exception is required, then that should be incorporated into the board's approval as a condition of approval. The third category of question related to this application is something that's a little unusual, and that is a question as involving what's called estoppel. Estoppel is very simply when circumstances arise that an applicant has been innocently misled to think, in this case, that the ordinance does not require a special exception, spends a large amount of money designing plans for this building, and then if the board decides that the special exception is indeed required, do those circumstances relieve the applicant of the technical obligation to get the special exception. That is may very well be an issue for this applicant, but our advice to this board is that it doesn't have the authority to make a decision on the question of estoppel. And if we get to that point, this board should be referring that question to the Board of Selectmen, which is the proper body to make such a determination. And the chair asked me just to basically give everybody a heads up as to those are the things that are involved in this discussion tonight. And I'll turn it back to you, Madam Chairman.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, let me go through the way a public hearing is conducted. First of all, we hear from the applicant who explains the application to us. At that time, board members can ask questions until they're comfortable getting all their answers, and then we determine if the application is complete. If it is, I'll ask for a motion to accept the application as complete, and at that point, I can open the public hearing. During the public hearing, if members of the public could try and keep their remarks to 5 minutes or less, we would really appreciate that. And then at the close of the hearing, we'll ask the planner if he has any conditions, and close the hearing, and then deliberate. As far as the applicant is concerned, if you would comment on the stormwater management and drainage issues, the lighting issues, also the parking and the architectural standards. I believe that we have sent to you the latest letter that we got from the Wolfeboro Waters Committee, and so you also have that. So if you could just comment on those as well as any other items you want to bring up. Okay, go ahead.
Is it on? Good evening. My name is Randy Tatro. I'm the project surveyor and project manager for the application that's before the board. We've been before the board numerous times in technical review boards and so forth, and I think most of the members are somewhat clear on the overall details, but I'll paraphrase real quickly from my narrative. And this is a formal application for site review for Hunter's Shop and Save grocery store rebuild. And everybody knows it's located on South Main Street, Glendon Street, and School Street in the rear. It's in the commercial the C1 zone. The proposal is simple. It involves an expansion or an extension to the original footprint of approximately 3,000 square feet. I think it's 3,011, but you'd have to quote me on it. So it's 3,000 square feet of additional space from the existing footprint. To that end, in my narrative, it says the final square footage will be 15,668, which is just under the perceived 25% threshold. We've brought various versions, amended versions before the board. They were preliminary and conceptual design in basis. This formal application has a pretty complete set of plans that hopefully everybody's had a chance to take a look at, even though I know they're small. There were larger versions available at the town hall. In my narrative, I indicate which sheets, which items are associated with. For instance, parking standards are shown on sheet C1, note 11. Lighting is on sheet L2. And so if you have the narrative, you can kind of follow along with that. Paul Blanc is the engineer that will be speaking to a lot of these issues. As everybody knows, I might as well mention, there was a minor lot line adjustment involved in the site plan that was approved by the board in June. The boundaries that are shown on the plans that you'll see tonight reflect that. And so we will answer any questions that the board may have. We can address the most recent feedback, if that's what the chairman would like us to do.
Yes.
And we can speak to that. If there are, unless there's something else that you guys have in mind, we can speak to that. We can go over any other things that we went over before that may or may not have, you guys have felt were complete as far as the plans goes. The parking is pretty similar to what we've discussed all along, and it meets it. Yeah, you know, not even counting the additional off-street parking that can be required. For the audience and anybody that hasn't been here before, it encompasses the whole parcel that everybody considers Hunter's, including the Walgreens parcel where the Walgreens building stands, and also the adjacent gravel area that was located behind the former Hunter's building. So this is all involved in this site plan. As discussed before, the condition of approval would be that there would be reciprocal easements for parking, drainage, utility connections, and so forth. That would be part, you know, of this proposal. What I think we'll do is we'll start maybe with the questions about the drainage. I can throw my 2 cents worth into there because we started with all this. There were different varying views on how it applied, if it applied, and that type of thing from the start with the stormwater regulations. So, you know, in our opinion, they necessarily apply in this case because we were taking existing impervious areas and covering and rebuilding them on existing impervious areas. So there's no additional impervious areas. So that was what questioned the compliance to the regulation. There was a question on disturbance. Disturbance being, you know, what's going to happen in the area where the new building is built or in the periphery around it or so forth. For stormwater management purposes, and I'll let Paul speak to this, you can ask what other questions, but generally for stormwater management purposes, which I think most of you understand, disturbance is, the disturbed areas are mostly protected by erosion sedimentation controls during construction. It's the finished impervious areas that are at issue as far as long-term stormwater management. So in other words, how we start out with impervious areas and how we finish with impervious areas is, you know, the question. And in this case, you know, 99.8% is going to be the same. The only place where it might differ slightly, and that's actually on the Walgreens parcel, but associated with this project, is a little bit of the periphery around the gravel lot that was in the rear. But generally, all the impervious surfaces are going to remain like that under the proposal. So hopefully everybody understands that. Now, there has been questions about the details on that stormwater. The owner, you know, put a foot forward and said he would do the best he can to come up with stormwater management and treatment. There's been concerns that that doesn't go far enough. So I'll let Paul speak to the response on the Wolfeboro Waters letter and their suggestions, and we'll go from there. How about that? Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Thank you, Randy. I'm Paul Blanc with Norway Plains Associates, and I'll talk a little bit about the stormwater. Brought a little pointer here that I'm excited to use about. I don't know if you guys can see it. So I'm going to talk into the mic so you can hear me. Is that good, Roger? Thank you. All right. So all the stormwater from this area all the way through and around the property will be coming through this system here, which is a filter air system. This is a filter air system, and then ultimately out through this vortex system, and then out into this street drainage here. So we're going to treat all the water using, I'm going to take this mic off, makes it a little easier for me there, okay? So we're going to be treating all the storm water coming off the roof that will go collect into the storm drain system and go through the vortex system. Okay, the vortex system is on the bottom left-hand corner of the screen. I don't know if you can see this right there. So the roof runoff does not go through the two filter systems. It goes right to this system through the catch basin systems here. That was a question that the Wolfeboro Waters had. The other question they had was, could you take the storm water and put it underground and infiltrate into the ground? It's a great idea, and it's used, and we've used it in a lot of places. This is Woodbridge soils. It doesn't allow for infiltration. The infiltration rate in the horizon C is 0 inches per hour. In the horizon B, it's 0.6 inches an hour, which is nothing, and we're in the lower half. We'd be 8 feet into the ground. Because of the 8% pitch, we would be digging so deep in the ground, it would just be storing water under the ground, and then it would fill up and there would be no way to get out, because you would have to tie into the catch basin out here, which is only about 4 feet deep. So it just wouldn't work. But we looked into it. I would love if it worked, but it doesn't. So we are removing the pollutants for TSS. We'll meet that. Phosphorus will meet that, and we're just shy of nitrogen removal by 15%. And that's from these studies that were done by different universities and research centers. And so we're really close to it, but what we don't get credit for are all the other great things that we're doing. We're removing total copper, dissolved copper, zinc, dissolved zinc, and some hydrocarbons with this, which are not part of the regulations. You know, so I'm kind of using that like, yay. But we're trying the best we can. This is what we're dealt with. I mean, infiltration is definitely the best way to get rid of nitrogen and phosphorus. It's just not, we just can't do it here. It's just not what'll work. We're doing our best. We might get some small infiltration with the trench here, but it's minimal to nothing in the back. So, but we did look into it as requested. So, I think that's about it for the drainage. I'd like to move on to the lighting, if we could, just real quick, if that's okay. That's actually what the vortex system looks like, just to show you guys while I'm at this. And then the Filterra system is over to the right. It's just very simple maintenance. And sorry, there's a little delay here as I press the... there's landscaping, so there's lighting. Ooh, unfortunately, what you see in that darker blue is actually the lights that exist there today, okay? In that really light blue, you probably see better on your pages, that's our proposed lights, okay? And as you can see, our lighting plan, it don't spill over to outside the property. So we had that done. The lights in the back on School Street along Walgreens, they'll be replaced with the downward or dark sky compliant. And all the lights are dark sky compliant as well that we're proposing.
So you feel as if you've complied with the site plan requirements for lighting?
That is correct. Okay. We do, just as it was the letter that the planner had written to you all. There's our landscape plan, okay? So we're adding some trees, replacing some trees, adding some low-lying perennials, and then down in that corner, by the filtrate system, the vortex system rather. That's going to have plantings down there. So after we rip that up, place that in there, you'll have plantings there.
What kind of plantings?
Geez, I can't see. We hired Wolfeboro and Associates, and they put together this plan, so I'm not really sure what to answer on that. It's not my expertise. So whatever they're there, so I'm not really sure.
You all set, John?
Go ahead.
Let me go back to.
Yeah, okay.
In the previous way that this building and parking lot were construed, was any of the pollutants which you're removing actually removed, or were they just all going to the lake?
Everything was just going right to the lake before, which is unfortunate. So what we're doing is a big improvement, and that was the goal. That's what the owner wanted to do. So.
And basically the entire surface was impermeable before, and now it is still impermeable.
That is correct. Yep.
The nitrogen on the roof, you want to talk about Wolfeboro waters. Remember, they were wondering about nitrogen coming off the roof.
Oh, yeah. So Wolfeboro Waters was concerned a little bit about the nitrogen and phosphorus that was coming off of the roof, about going into the system. So they were concerned about the overburdening of the filter system. Those systems, it's actually going to go through the vortex system down through here. So it'll go. But yes, to answer you, everything was 100% impervious before. Now we're doing something, we're treating it. That's the goal.
That's what I thought.
Thank you, Peter.
Okay, so the landscaping, you're coming more into compliance than you were before.
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Could you elaborate on the landscaping on the School Street lawn?
Yeah, so she's provided this tree as required in the parking, because as the ordinance says, so there'll be a big tree right there. And then the rest, it's hard to see this. Right there, there's where she's going to be planting that big tree right there. That's what that symbol is.
That's an elm tree.
What's that?
It's going to be an elm tree.
Elm tree?
Yes.
Thank you, John. An elm tree. I don't know my trees. I mean, what can I say?
And is that one of the 6 feet vinyl fences running along the residential property?
Yeah. So Roger's asking, right here along this property, you can't see this pointer, which is very disappointing because I was excited to use this tonight. It's a pet toy, actually. So anyways, that's a fence that will be screening that resident right there. So along, if you're looking at School Street and our parking area, just to the right, that will be a fence. So it'll be on a retaining wall, which it'll be about this high, and then on top will be a fence.
Any other questions? Okay, keep.
So the fence, it's on top of a wall, so does it exceed 6 feet? Or what's the story with that?
It's a structure on the property line that theoretically could be 35 feet tall. So it will be short of that.
Just wanted to get that out.
Excuse me, 30 feet tall for those keeping track. But it will be less than that.
Yeah, it'll be less than that. So the reason we have that retaining wall there is because, I'm going to switch back just to kind of, at the beginning of this, I think, John, you requested, and if we could have the stormwater, capture the stormwater, instead of sending it to School Street untreated into the system, sending it back onto the site. And we did that. We tilted the site back. To do that, we need a retaining wall to hold back the soils back there so we could capture the stormwater. And then you'd want a fence on top of that retaining wall for a couple reasons, so somebody doesn't walk over it in the middle of the night, and also to screen. So it's a safety thing and a buffer.
So that's a bonus for our stormwater area, actually.
It is. It's a big bonus, which is great. Because before it was just sheeting off into School Street and carrying the pollutants off of that.
Any other questions?
Is the wall on the corner closest to the post office to remain or be replaced?
The wall down here,
Yeah, right on the corner.
that's just going to remain. So it'll stay the same.
Are you pretty much set then? Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I'm all
Okay.
set. Thank you.
Okay, is somebody here to speak about the architectural
Yeah, Zach is here.
standards?
Come on down, Zach. Thanks, sir. Do you want to give it a shot? You just press that button. A little delay there. Take my little hat right there.
Perfect. My name is Zach Smith. I'm with Harriman Associates, again here presenting to you tonight. Let's get to the right page. So while I'm flipping, I should be able to keep this pretty short, but I'll cover all the building stuff due to application timelines. What was seen in the design review is the same thing that's going to show up here today. There we go. So the site within context, we'll start here and we can come back to it after I get through all my slides. This building is on top of a hill. This picture is taken about halfway up said hill. That's why it looks fairly level, but we all know the site pretty well. And if I were to walk down South Main Street a little bit farther towards downtown, you would see more of the hill. But within context, you can get an idea of how it's fitting with the scales of the buildings adjacent to it. It is not terribly tall. It fits within the character of the buildings around it, which are, even though it's on the edge of downtown, it is a fairly commercial-looking buildings. From the designs we've iterated, it still does have some of the supermarket characteristics of the higher walls and things like that. We did try to soften those facades with gables, as we talked about last time, and awnings and different colors and materials and banding and all those types of things to help break down that scale even further and give it a character we felt more fitting within the context that we're putting it in. So talking about the materials here pretty quickly, looking at the front of the building or looking at the front entry, a little bit hard to tell on this rendering, but the lower about 3 feet is a full white brick band, and so those are real bricks, not thin bricks. They'll have some depth, they'll have some character, but brick. Above that, you'll have a slightly off-white but white clapboard, and that clapboard is the field material, so on the back sides of the building, it is all that same clapboard material with about a 5-inch reveal. There's a white PVC band, and so it will be a constructed band, but we're using a PVC type material or proposing a PVC type material with a darker clapboard above that. The awnings will be a dark green, similar to the dark green seen throughout town and on the former Hunter's awnings, and their sign there in the middle of the entry. It will be this umbrella type fabric. Yes, we understand there will be maintenance associated with any fabric awning we're doing. The frames will be aluminum. They technically would be demountable, but we don't foresee those being demounted in the winter. The flatter awning in the middle there and along the backside by receiving is an exposed wood frame system, and so it will be a wood joined material with a black standing seam metal on top, and then flanking the entries and in a couple places along the building are black, more rustic looking fixtures than a kind of typical commercial fixture. Some more views of the building. On top, you still see the entry pivoting towards South Main Street a little bit. On the next image down, you're seeing the building with the gable. One of the comments that came up in the last meeting, which is something I still would like to explore, is the top window with the slight eyebrow to it. I think probably has a little bit more arc we can give it to help match down and towards the downtown, some of the arches that are there now. I think we have about another foot or so before we start to get in the way of structures and those types of things. All the windows are real windows currently, and so we're proud of that. So they're not, none of these windows that we're showing are fake windows. And then on the bottom window shows our largest blank public-facing facade, which we're hoping can be used for fixturing for flowers and plants and produce and things seasonally to help activate those sides a little bit. Yes, there are still large sides. This is a little bit of a compromise in a lot of the things that we do as professionals here. That's where it ended up. And then on the backside, we do have two backsides of the building currently. We did move, one of the things I don't think Paul has talked about yet, the dumpsters did move around to the backside of the building, so they're not along the main parking lot side anymore. And you can see that about the middle of the north elevation there. Those dumpsters would be fully screened along with all the other equipment along that side. And then the backside that directly abuts the backsides of the buildings on the next street over is a large expanse of building with not much on it. There is a fence that we're not showing there, and the contour does come up about 4 feet on that side. We did incorporate a retaining wall into the building because that's what needed to be done, and so that whole grade is coming up along the building. And so if you see where that brick band is on my left, that grade by the time it gets to the back is a little bit above that, and so the scale of that does shrink. It does not help the views on top of the roof that people have asked about, but it will, that isn't as much that I'm showing there. And that's all I got. So questions from the board?
And do you feel as if you've substantially complied with the architectural standards in the site plan regulations?
As they're written, yes.
Okay.
So do you think you've complied with the roof screening enough?
I think so. The only roof at this point in the design, we're about 60 to 75% through construction documents. There's only miscellaneous roof vents, which are unfortunately, there's none on the buildings out here, but plumbing vents and those types of things. All of our mechanical ventings are through a system that is ground mounted. That's been talked about on some previous meetings. So we don't foresee any equipment being mounted up there.
So on that long side there where there's, you said there's going to be a fence on top of that wall also, so
Yep.
it's going to go halfway up that building?
Yeah, so a little bit different than the area that Paul was talking about where it actually turns into a retaining wall. We actually had to build, so the building foundation and the retaining wall become one at the building. And so it's not really sitting on top of the wall, it's kind of sitting along the grade, but yes, at its highest would match his retaining wall height and then slope down towards the front of the building, which would be what we consider our 0-0 grade.
So have any neighbors asked to have screening over on that side?
Yeah, John. Originally, we thought we had to do a double retaining wall back there, but because they can do it structurally with the building, that grade's just going to be flat along there, so there'll be a white fence that runs along there. The screening, we only show screening, I think, on the landscape plan on that corner where it abuts the residential use properties, but we didn't propose any more screening along that fence line because we're only 4 feet or so from the building, 4 or 5 feet from the building, and it wouldn't be, in order to do that, we'd have to either get a landscape easement from the neighbors, and it just doesn't make any sense to do that. So we've spent time screening around where it abuts the residential areas, and then it'll just be the white fence along the back of the commercial properties that border Union Street.
Questions?
Yeah, on the School Street side of the building, I see you have a transformer pad, a generator pad, the fluid cooler pad. Is there any provision to screen those from view and protect them?
We're going to have to screen them as needed. Like, we can't get, some of those can't be screened because of the way it is, but once we get the specs on it, yes, they will be screened out. We just have to get the specs and figure out how far the distance is between the actual unit and the how that's going to be placed.
Thank you.
Yeah.
What about the noise issue from the mechanical units? Is that decreased or?
I can't speak to that.
So I never heard the initial units, unfortunately, and couldn't get a sound rating to those units, so I can't speak to them technically. I know the units were quite old that were back there. The units that we're putting in are a lot newer and meet newer noise regulations, so I can assume they're quieter. And I would hope they would be well maintained for how much they're paying for the units, and so hopefully they'll continue to operate quieter. And they are in a little bit better location than they were previously, closer to CVS and farther away from those abutting neighbors that spoke to it. But unfortunately, that's about all as I can say, since I don't have a way to compare those two things.
Okay, thank you. Yes.
Yeah, there was a discussion with the abutter subsequent to the planning board meeting, the abutter that had concerns with that. He didn't exactly understand the heights and how that would look from the different sides. And after that discussion, he seemed to be okay with it. So I just wanted to let the board know that.
Okay,
so.
okay, thank you very much.
What was the fence that was along the east elevation, and what will it be?
So it's a white PVC fence.
And not a chain link?
Not a chain link fence.
Any other questions? Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so at this point, there may have been a couple of things we skipped around or glossed over because you guys have talked about them at the other meetings, be it the the offloading and the loading, the fact that there's going to be one small spot for offloading small box trucks in the back, the fact that we had initially talked about a pickup window on the far side of Walgreens on that back. We call it future pickup window. We didn't want to get hung up or complicated since they don't know exactly how that's going to work, and they're probably going to have to come back before you guys to show you those details when that happens. But we set up the parking lot in the rear for that. So there's a few things that maybe not everybody has heard in the audience that we have talked about previous to this, and we have vetted those out. So I thought it might be helpful to at least mention that. At that point, I think we submitted, the materials to be Tavis's opinion, worth, for acceptance of the application, at least at this point. And then after that, we can answer more questions from you guys or from any public comments. Thank
Okay,
you.
could you just comment on the overall safety of the site, the improvements that you've made?
Yeah, so Paul didn't elaborate on this because we talked about it before, and I noticed that when Zach was going through the architecturals, we tried to do a better job with the ADA compliance on this. Anybody that remembers, the former Hunters and how the ADA was set up, because it had been morphed over time. So the ADA spaces are in a similar location to the right side front of the building, but the grades that are associated with them are better, and the sidewalks associated with them meet the ADA requirements, whereas before I'm not so sure that happened. So we have some there, and we also have some on the north side of the building, or the northwest side of the building, so that there's actual space for people to get off onto a sidewalk and be able to access it by ADA. So that, coupled with the fact that, as everybody knows, it's kind of a challenging site for trailer trucks and so forth, for deliveries. We talked about hours of operation. We talked about, at the last meeting, you guys were given general hours of operation, general hours of deliveries and so forth on that side. It's similar to how it was done before, but we think a lot better, because we've widened the areas for the trucks to travel so that they can get in and out easier, and have less problematic times. Julie brought up, what if they're there when someone's walking around and so forth. They're obviously going to try to keep that to a minimum. That's going to have to be done by scheduling, and that's up to the managers to be able to handle that. But we think overall, it's similar to the other parking lot. It's a steep parking lot. It's 8%. We've tried to do some things drainage-wise with the diversion bump, if you will, that's going to direct any water from sheeting right down onto Main Street the way it used to, and try to direct it into the system. There were questions about how that was going to relate to plowing and so forth, or how it would hold up over time. We're going to have to see. It seemed like a better fix than a infiltrated drain because of maintenance issues and winter issues with that. So, suffice to say, we've gone through a lot of stuff with this, and I know you guys know that. And, I appreciate your indulgence with it all, and on how we've gone back and forth. So tonight, I'm sure there's going to be some more questions about, ideas and so forth, but I think generally, we've done the best we can to get it to this point. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions from planning board members? If not, I'd entertain a motion to accept this application as complete.
So moved.
Okay.
Seconded.
Motion has been made and seconded. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Okay, all right, thank you. Okay, Doug, I'm about to open the public hearing. Did you want to make a...
Yeah, just a statement for myself. I expect everyone in attendance tonight wants Hunter's Market to be rebuilt. When reviewing any site plan or application, including tonight's, the planning board is required to follow the ordinances and bylaws approved by the voters of Wolfeboro. It may be inconvenient, expensive, or time-consuming to comply with these ordinances. However, the planning board must follow the laws of the town. I'd also like to mention that the public comment portion of the hearing that we're about to enter is meant to give the public an opportunity to note inaccuracies or omissions in an application. Public comments should not address issues that are outside the purview of the planning board. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so I'll open the public hearing now. If anyone wants to speak to the issue, come on up and try and keep the comments to about 5 minutes or less. Okay.
I'll keep my comments brief because I'm sure there's a lot of people here that want to speak. My name is Luke Freudenberg, 68 Center Street. Just want to reiterate, I'm not here tonight as a selectman or as a member of the zoning board, which I sit on. I fully support Hunters being rebuilt, and I think everyone in this room does. As for the special exception that you would be maybe considering and sending to the zoning board, I think that would do a real disservice to this applicant. I don't feel in the current capacity the board which I sit on could handle it. And I want to go to the actual gravity of the special exception and why legal may be advising you to make that in your conditions. During disasters, with federal legislation, okay, let's say a disaster happens and a municipality has something that's damaged, that's infrastructure related, like a gas station or a grocery store. And let's say there's only one of those in the municipality. Federal law, and even when it comes to town law, for instance, when it comes to a town municipality, if we want to build a library, we don't have to follow zoning. We can, cursory, come to before zoning or come before planning for an informal type meeting. The town doesn't need to follow that. In federal law, okay, if you're in a federal situation with a disaster, for instance, a fire, burns down a vital infrastructure piece of a municipality that people rely on, the planning board, your board, can have some alleviation of responsibility and to alleviate the applicant of some responsibilities. So I just feel that it would be a disservice to put a special condition upon this application and send it to a zoning board that I feel could not handle getting the job done in a timely and efficient way. It's my personal opinion, but I stand by it. I think a lot of people have worked, I think the applicant has worked very hard to do many of the things that have been asked for with stormwater well before coming before this planning board. I think the applicant has a vested interest not only in rebuilding the store, but in this community, henceforth paying his employees the entire time while this whole process is going on. I think we as a town need to realize, and we as elected members of this town need to realize that sometimes the best thing for government to do is get out of the way. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead. I'd like to thank my counterpart, Luke, for the backhanded remark to the zoning board that he felt we couldn't handle that. I think it was totally out of order. But on a technical question relevant to the plan before you, I'm wondering if we could get a sense of, if this plan is approved tonight, with conditions I'm sure there will be, is that default approving the plan for the drive-through pickup? There hasn't been a lot of discussion about circulation and so forth, and I think I heard the engineer say that they would be coming back for a separate site plan for that function, and if that's the case, I hope it's very clear on the approval that it does not include the pickup. Could somebody answer that, please? Okay, yes.
Yeah, yes, Suzanne. That was what we wanted to do right along. It got to a point where there were going to be some details regarding how exactly that was done. It's probably going to be done by the tube system and all that, and what they were going to have for structures, and we didn't want to muck it up with this approval, so we thought that would be an easier and a quick way to do it, just to come back with a minor site review, either amendment or a separate thing in that vein.
Okay, thanks.
My name is Tom Bell, resident Ian's Way. I agree with Luke. We need this building. We need this shopping center. They're great people. They've done wonderful work for us over the years. Curious whether there was a analysis of coming in to deliver goods from the school street side. The deliveries from the parking lot have always been a problem, have always been challenging. And that seems to me to be an interesting way to come in to deliver all of the produce and things that come into the store. So I'm curious whether that was considered, and that also seems to me to be a logical way for the drive-in pickup for the Walgreens.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Randy. You want to speak to that?
Yes. So, as the board knows, we went through various versions of showing templates with the trailer trucks and how they were able to come in that way, as far as entering on Main Street, coming down, turning, backing up for deliveries, and exiting out back onto Main Street. As far as the School Street side, that's going to only be limited to small box trucks for just one area in the deli section, and I think in the back of the store. So what happened originally when we first started, for everybody who wasn't around then, we had shop and say the Hannaford people come up, and the actual truck drivers and everybody, to see if we could get in the back, because it would have been optimum if we could have got everything in the back. But just based on the parameters we had with Union Street, Glendon Street, School Street, they couldn't make the swing, and they said, absolutely we can't do that. That's the only way we can go in is the way we've shown. And we did prove that by templates to the board in the design review meetings.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Okay.
John Sandine from Winock Gate Lane. I would also like to comment about the delivery location, because as I look at the plan, the delivery location, and we all know what the situation is with trucks and delivery. Even though management has wonderful plans, the trucks are going to come during the day when we don't want them there. And they're going to be driving back next to the Walgreens. And if you look at the plan, there are 3 handicap spaces directly next to the delivery line. So effectively, you're going to block people from getting access to Walgreens to pick up their prescriptions. Secondly, you're going to block the access of 10 parking spaces behind the building, because they have to walk right through where the trucks are going to be parked. I would suggest that you ought to look at the space where you used to have the entry, the deliveries. And if you look at the plans, there is a very nice spot there which says for bike racks. I think bike racks could go someplace else, and the delivery could go right where the bike racks would be. That's my comment.
Okay, thank you.
So if you indulge us while Paul gets the site plan up there, I think it needs to be known that this is the setup for the shop and say for the Hunters building. Walgreens already has an existing situation, and they have existing delivery system and so forth that's functioning right now. So, I live in the area. I park there. I've seen trucks in there in non-optimum hours in front of Walgreens. What we tried to do is we tried to set up so that when the trucks deliver at the off hours, we can't wave a magic wand over it, and if someone is in an odd situation. But that is the best place to go through there. They're not going to block off the handicap spaces, because they're going to go through, around, and back into that delivery spot. So those spaces will be open. Now, for a split second when they drive through there, they'd go by those spaces. You see what I'm talking about? So, yes. And then they'd back in there. Now, hopefully, they do it under the hours that are being put forth so that there isn't any problem with blocking off spaces. Again, the bike racks, the bike racks were an addendum that was brought up at the TRC meeting by various members, and so that wasn't why we didn't put the entrance place there. And the gentleman is correct, that's where they used to come in. And in this particular case, a lot that drove that back entrance for deliveries had to do with the internal makeups of the building. You know, and maybe if the board wants, we could have Hunter's management speak to that. I mean, the board has, you know, hasn't seen building plans because we haven't got far enough to approval to have building plans, but there are interior plans on how the interior of the store is going to be set up, and that is one of the things that drives where you do, you know, where you offload as well. Any questions about that?
Well, what about moving the bike racks? Would that help any?
Say that again?
If you were to move the bike racks to a different location?
I don't know that that would matter at all. I'm a little confused by that. I mean, because where the deliveries are going to be made at the far left rear end of the property, Kathy, you know, the deliveries are, the trucks are going to come in, they're going to go down, and they're going to back up into there. Okay, and inside of the store, that's where they need the air. That's what's being designed as the areas to offload to get the rest of the stuff around the store. I'm speaking of something I know is out of my lane a little bit, but certainly if you'd like to question the you know, the managers or the owner that are here, they could speak to that better than me.
Okay. Thank you. Okay. Anyone else want to speak? Okay.
Rich Massey for Wolfeboro Waters Committee. I want to acknowledge Paul Black's addressing the issues that were raised by Wolfeboro Waters. I do just want to make sure I understood completely what was being said. It was a little bit difficult sometimes to see where the pointer was from where I was sitting in the back. So my understanding is that the issue with infiltration of the roof runoff has to do with the types of soils that underlie the site. If that's my first question. Also, it's my understanding that the runoff, as it is intended to be directed by the current plan, would bypass the filtration systems on South Main and on Union Street and would go directly to the vortex system. So that's my second question. Just a theoretical question. In the best of all possible worlds, I thought Paul acknowledged that when possible, you want to infiltrate water from a roof, and apparently that's not the case here. However, my question would be, if we had that best of all possible worlds and we subtracted that runoff from the vortex system, would it make any difference in the amount of material that would be flushed out of that vortex? In other words, does the additional runoff from the roof in the end mean that there's more siltation coming out of that into the town's systems? So those would be my questions. Just to broaden the discussion for a little bit, as the letter from Wolfeboro Waters pointed out, filtering or infiltrating water from a roof runoff is not unique to this site. It's been done at the Kingswood High School already. And at some time in the future, the new public safety building is going to be coming before this board. And the board should expect that runoff from the roof of that structure will also come up again. It's the position of Wolfeboro waters that the runoff from a roof, especially the size of the buildings we're talking about, is a significant issue. If it doesn't get captured and infiltrated, it inevitably ends up in our lakes. And so Wolfeboro Waters will continue to urge the planning board to take that into consideration and to look to that issue, if not here, then in future developments.
Okay.
And if Paul wouldn't mind answering my question, I would appreciate it.
Yes, I'm going to ask him to. Thank you. Okay, Paul.
Thank you for the questions. Can you hear me okay? Yeah. I want to make sure of this. So to answer your question about the roof runoff will be going to the vortex system, and that's been sized for that runoff. So that's been sized for, so it will.
So does it filter?
Yes, it goes through that filter. It's been sized for that. It's actually upsized for the bigger storm, so it's all been designed for that right from the beginning. Woodbridge soils, again, you can't infiltrate into it because it has a 0 inches per hour rate, so that's just not going to work. But a great idea. It's the great way to do things is infiltrate right back into the ground. I mean, that's the best way to treat these things. What was the other question? I'm so sorry. About the fill. So if you put fill on the B horizon, let's say you do 24 inches, with the grades of this, we're still going to be down 8 feet into the C horizon, so you have no infiltration again. It's just the soils will not infiltrate.
I believe the last question was whether the amount of flow off the roof would cause sedimentation.
Oh, so no, it's been sized for that. We've accounted for that flow, and actually for the bigger storm events, that's what we went for. We could have just went for what's called the first flush or the 1-inch storm, and just sized for that. Be a much smaller unit, and it would have passed. Dan wanted to go. The owner wanted to go with a bigger unit, and I said yes, let's do it, and max out the size for what we got. So I'm really happy we went with that, actually.
So can I just like to make a comment. So once this particular system is in,
yep,
you'll be ahead of your neighbors as far as collecting all of the runoff from the street and from the roofs and all of that, and collecting it and filtering it so it doesn't go into the lake. This particular system you'd be way ahead of anybody else in town, I take it.
I can't speak to everybody else in town, but I can speak at least, but yes, we're doing the best we can. And that's the idea. I know the building next to us, the bank there, they tried putting up some hoods into their system, which is great. We're actually going to be adding hoods into the catch basins as well as another means of taking out some of the pollutants and sediments and floatables, actually, like cigarettes and stuff like that. Don't smoke, it's bad for you.
So even things that come from, say, Main Street or this particular building, it goes out on Main Street. It's going to end up in the lake.
It will, unfortunately, but I'm hoping that.
But there's So what I'm saying is, you people are ahead of the curve, in as much as doing your part to collect your runoff and phosphates. I think.
You're exactly right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
So I'd like to make one comment. So the wall on this side, that's actually going to be built up. So actually going to be retaining stormwater, holding it back from running over that wall onto your property. And
yeah, Randy.
So yeah, John, that's going to be above grade. So anything's going to be pitched back that way. Quickly segueing back to the soil part, because I'm more of a layman to some of the engineering than most people would realize. So we had geotechnical borings done for the building, so we knew it could meet the structural requirements as far as making a ret wall on the backside behind El Cientro and Kurt DeViles and so forth. So in that report, when we looked at that report, there was fill material that was put in there over time that is not of, your high-grade gravel material. It's more of silty sand fill. So that gets put on the original soil, which is the Woodbridge soil that Paul talks about, which is a pan soil. And if anybody understands that, the water goes down and it only goes sideways. It doesn't go down. Like if you're doing a perk test in it, it's going to seep out the sides. So that was the reason why we couldn't do the standard, underground storage and infiltration stuff, along with the grades, along with the grading, and how deep it would have to be. But I just wanted everybody to know that that's where the soils information comes from, not just out of a book somewhere. We had actual geotechnical borings that we went on to see what the depths of the soil was and how compacted it was. So that was the reason for that analysis.
I assume that the Vortex device is going to have a regular maintenance program on it?
Yeah, and in fact, we have to put a maintenance program on the plans, Peter. We looked into some other systems, and again, I'm not Paul's the expert on those, jellyfish, and there's a few other things that required much more maintenance, much more expensive maintenance over time. And when we explained that to the owner, this was the one he went with, and still, could meet middle ground. So hopefully that answers your question. They will have to be maintained, just like Public Works was maintaining that catch basin at the bottom. That was getting filled up with sand and salt over the years, and this should be a much better situation.
Okay, thank you. And any other member of the public want to address this issue? Okay, planning board members, any other comments or questions? Okay. Tavis, do you have some conditions for us to consider?
I have a couple of fairly standard recommended conditions. One is it refers to the plans as materials received by June 19th. Applicant shall submit a surveyed as-built to the town upon completion of construction to verify compliance with dimensions as submitted by the planning board, or to the planning board. That would include the vortex systems. Applicant, so the first recommended condition is the following plans as amended to the date of this approval are incorporated into the approval. That's plan set materials as received by June 19th of this year. Number 2, applicant shall submit a surveyed as-built to the town upon completion of construction to verify compliance with the dimensions as submitted to the planning board. That would include things like the vortex system and the building itself, along with the fence. Number 3, applicant should be responsible for the payment of all recording fees of the notice of decision, and all documentation submitted in the application package by the applicant, and any requirements imposed by other agencies are part of this approval unless otherwise updated, revised, clarified in some manner, or superseded in full or in part. In the case of conflicting information between documents, the most recent documentation and this notice herein shall generally be determining. Going back to the earlier discussion that Walter had for the public and the board, I do have an alternate or an additional condition of approval to suggest if the board wants to entertain it. That is to say, recommended condition number 5, prior to issuance of a building permit, the applicant shall obtain a special exception or expansion up to but not to exceed 25% of the original footprint, unless otherwise relieved of such condition by a finding of municipal estoppel by either the Board of Selectmen or a court of law.
Okay, what about a bond for this project?
I don't recommend a bond in the case of this because there are no public improvements being made. If the board wants to require a construction observation agreement for drainage and landscaping, that could be determined after the fact.
Okay.
If you make the condition, we can determine the 110% value after the fact.
Okay.
Close the public hearing.
Yeah, so any other questions before I do that? Okay, then I'm going to close the public hearing. Board members, how would you like to proceed?
Madam Chairman, I'd like to make a motion that we approve case number 2023-11 for 50 and 60 South Main Street, Wolfeboro, New Hampshire, tax map lot 217-058, comma 217-059, with any recommendations, conditions.
I'll second that.
Okay.
Which conditions are you including, 1 through 4?
1 through 5? Or 1 through...
I think you should have that defined 1 through 4 or 1 through 5.
1 through 4. I don't, those were the first conditions. We have to prove the second, the last one, don't we?
Yes.
We have to approve it, is that what you said?
Yes, the 5th condition.
Well, I believe you can include that condition as part of your motion.
Okay, I'll include that as part of my motion. So that's 1 through 5.
Okay, so the motion has been made. Is it still seconded?
It's still seconded with conditions 1 through 5.
Okay, all right, thank you. Okay, any other comments? Okay, all in favor? Oh, I'm sorry.
You need to do findings of fact.
Findings of fact.
Okay, do you want to go through those, Tavis? I thought you were going to... Okay, well...
I mean,
okay,
I can.
I'll go through them. This applicant has met to the... substantially met, I think, the stormwater management regulations. They have substantially met the lighting and parking, as well as the architectural standards. They have addressed the safety issues on site and taken those into consideration in the reviewing of the site. Anyone else want to add any findings? And therefore, it seems that they have substantially complied with the site plan regulations. Is that adequate?
Peter's got a question. Peter's got a question.
Okay, thanks.
I'm concerned about the 5th condition because of the misrepresentation given to the applicant. And I question whether we should have that. I really don't know the answer to it, but I wonder whether that is something that we should consider, and maybe we should end up having a motion about that singularly as to whether we should add that 5th condition.
Could you speak to that, Walter?
You asked me to speak to it. I mean,
The 5th condition.
I'm not here to advocate on that particular point. All I can tell you is if you leave off the requirement of the, in our opinion, if you leave off the requirement of the special exception and your approval is challenged in court, the likely outcome is that a court would say the planning board did not have the authority to ignore that requirement. And I understand, I think I understand your thoughts behind wanting to ignore that or facilitate this project. And I think that's done appropriately under the circumstances by a finding of estoppel. But again, this board doesn't have the authority to speak to that. It would be the Board of Selectmen that has that authority.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I like reasons.
Okay, did you have something before we vote, Roger?
Yeah, I guess I think under the well, I'm the person who brought this up. But I think under the circumstances, I would delete the request that they obtain a special exception and instead refer this matter to the Board of Selectmen and urge the Board of Selectmen to use municipal estoppel so that this can go forward.
Okay, thank you.
Well, Roger, I think that the way we've worded the condition is such that it does give the Board of Selectmen the option to do so.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, any other comments? Okay, motion has been made and seconded to approve this project with the conditions mentioned. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Okay, all right, thank you all very much for coming. Okay, we got some minutes we got to go through, I'm afraid. What? No, we're going to, minutes. And,
I don't think you're going to get the minutes in.
What?
I don't think you're going to get the minutes in.
Yeah,
that's right.
Just say 5 minutes.
We'll take a 5-minute recess.
Time to rebuild, buddy. Tell you. Yes.
Members were here.
Okay.
He says that's right. So I agree. I think we acted the way that we can.
Oh, yeah, the email from Johnny Cook. Yeah, right, yes, we are. No, did I say Monday? Yes, right, I did. I'm very sorry about that. Yeah, okay. I was going to send you another email, but sorry about that. Okay, all right.
So basically, see the other systems. Yes.
Do you have that information from Patty Cook?
Yeah, I have.
Oh, okay. It's here someplace.
It probably is the best scenario in the end anyways.
Well, good.
Yeah, thank you.
I got it. There it is.
Oh, okay. All right. Yeah. Yeah, right.
Down the back of that one?
Yep.
Yeah.
No, they're okay.
We gotta move the meeting. Everybody's coming out. couldn't get down the stairs.
No, we don't have any more. We just have minutes. We had one more, but it's postponed until next. All we have is minutes, I think. Yeah, that's down.
All right,
Yeah,
good job.
okay, good job, thank you.
He's worked hard.
Yeah, no, that's very good.
That's why I say, so we're talking about trying to find some nitrates that were really, so there's different types of nitrates. Ammonia, which is a positively charged.
Right.
It's a fluoride plant.
Yeah.
Nitrates, N2O, acid rain, snow,
Right.
those that land on your roof. Those are atmospheric, N2,
Yeah.
okay? Those are negatively charged. That's why they slip through the ground. The ammonia is positively charged, but plants grab onto them.
Oh, okay. Yep.
Nitrite,
Well, you can hurt them.
nitrogen, is negatively charged. It falls through the ground and goes into your stormwater area.
Okay.
That's the difference. It's the big difference.
Yeah.
Okay? Where you find nitrates on a roof is in very minimal amounts, only atmospheric.
Yeah.
It doesn't have a green roof.
Right.
It's not being fertilized up there. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Those are where nitrates would come from if it was on a roof. Everybody understand?
Yeah, okay, folks, we need to continue our business. Yoo-hoo.
Everybody, we're trying to continue our meeting. I'd appreciate it if you could quiet down.
It's a long time. For me.
We're coming.
No, we're coming.
Yes, and you're on the agenda.
Trying to continue our meeting, please.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is discussion of the email that we received from Patty Cook. And Tavis, I'd asked you to please make sure that the planning board gets this email and also be prepared to address this issue. I'm trying.
Thank you.
Hey, yes, thank you very much. Okay, go ahead. I've asked you to speak to this issue that Patty Cook brought up.
Yes, basically, the planning board has received an email from Patty Cook regarding lighting of Hunter's parking lot and the utilization of town poles to do so. There are a couple of photos involved. This is an issue that came before the zoning board not long ago. Years ago, the municipal electric department had a program whereby residents could essentially petition the town for the installation of what were called utility lights. Throughout the town, there are some 200 to 300 utility lights that were installed by MED and typically light commercial parking lots and similar structures. There's 3 of them on the town hall parking lots, and they are literally throughout town. As you saw in the lighting plan for Hunters a couple of moments ago, there were some 10 or 15 lights that surround that parking lot that were put in under just that program. That program is no longer in place. It is not the position of MED at this time to accept applications or provide lighting on utility poles for private lighting. The essence of the question that went to the Zoning Board of Adjustment not long ago was whether or not said lights need to comply with the zoning regulations. The Zoning Board did not actually act on that question, but addressed the one light raised in the appeal, or in an appeal, and suggested that the town need to remediate the light pollution, for lack of a better phrase. So I think one of the staff level suggestions, and this isn't just me, this was the code officer and the director of MED was to have a discussion suggesting that perhaps the town manager address this solution or this issue, if you will, with the Board of Selectmen to see if the town wanted to pursue a program to remediate lights over time, or what the town approach to said lighting should be moving forward. One of the issues that's coming up is the original lights that were installed with the high pressure sodium. MED can no longer fix, maintain, repair, replace in kind, what have you, the high pressure sodium lights, at the same time as there is a rental arrangement in position for each of the lights. Anyone that has these lights pays rent to MED for providing light. Therefore, MED is somewhat obligated to keep providing light since there's a contract in place. So what most often happens is that the high pressure sodium, when it fails, breaks, or needs to be replaced for whatever reason, gets replaced with an LED light. Anyone that's swapped out an incandescent for an LED knows what happens. Oh my goodness, it's so much brighter. So the gist of this email, as I look at it, and I'm sure Patty's here, there she is. Patty could speak to this further, is really what does the town want the town to look like? Should we continue the ideology of simply replacing it because there's a rental program and we've provided the service over time? And then the other question is, I suppose, it's not really in the email, but how should the planning board incorporate these lights, if legally able to, into site plan reviews such as the one that was just approved? So.
Okay, yes, Patty, why don't you speak to this issue? Sorry.
Oh. Need to turn it on,
yeah,
on the side.
Pull it off.
There you go.
No? Oh. Now I'm on. Patty Cook. I actually don't laugh, but I actually promised myself I wouldn't speak at this meeting. Number one, thank you to the board for bringing this up. And Tavis, sincerely, thank you for a great explanation of the situation. So, thanks. We all get it that things change over time. Unfortunately, Peter and I had an experience the past 6 months where, because we couldn't get answers by emails or meetings, we were forced to hire an attorney and present a case to the ZBA to get a situation resolved. That was a replacement of a sodium light to an LED pack light on a town pole that was lighting up our backyard. And it took us 6 months and attorney's fees to resolve that. As a taxpayer and a business owner, I'm really disappointed about that. That aside, what we came to find out, and again, towns change over time. This lighting program was in place. It did have criteria as far as an application when a private citizen wanted to put a light on a pole. They were supposed to apply. The selectmen were involved in the approval. There were multiple steps. And as far as we could ever get from the information we obtained during our case, those steps were never adhered to. We were never able to get any documentation as to how a private light, at that time sodium, was on a pole to light a commercial property's parking lot. Okay. To Tavis's point, it changed over in our case in December. We presented it starting with emails in the 1st of January. The problem I'm having is twofold. The selectmen and the planning board are well versed with my issue with the town lighting for the past 5 or 6 years. My business is design and aesthetics. I think a good indicator is the project we did at the Pickering House and at the Samuel Avery building. It matters to us, and I think our goal was to set a benchmark for the town to follow suit. Instead, I have been told by various town employees that the backlit sign, I don't want to pick on businesses, but the backlit signs at some businesses don't count as backlight because now they're not considered backlit neon, they're backlit LED. That's plain terminology. The lit signs in our real estate offices that are white LED lights, that is signage. It's up for dispute as to how to interpret. All I can say is, having come here for over 60 years, having been a full-time citizen since 2010, having been a personal investor in a town to save a property and the character of this town, and to watch this lighting situation chip away is heartbreaking. So I suggest, number one, each of you drive around the town docks. You drive around even the church. Our zoning is clear that light packs on wall-mounted light packs are not allowed. They are everywhere. It is a case of enforcement. LED has made them worse. They're bright. It's a case of enforcement. But these things were in place, and now it's gone way past. So I'm in real estate construction. I work with electricians. The cheapest way to light a space is to slap a LED white light pack on a wall to bright light. Anyway, to keep it shorter, because I ramble, all I can say is that philosophically, to me, it is wrong for anyone, including the Pickering House Inn, to have a light on a town pole lighting my commercial parking lot, period. That is part of the big kids' game of having commercial property. And because of this slide, and because of it just sliding and sliding, if you drive around this town, it's everywhere. I don't know at this point how it does get fixed. There will be hard feelings. There will be people thinking, you know, I can get hit in the parking lot. I don't know. But I just think it's a shame there hasn't been a set and clear path on this, and it is changing the dynamic and aesthetics of the town. The last point that I want to make, because poor Jim Pinio, is he here tonight? I sent him an email Monday morning, and I don't know if this is the planning board, and this is anecdotal, but I want you to hear this. We were fortunate enough to have a travel writer from a very, very major publication, national publication, stay at the Pickering House Inn to do yet another feature on our inn. We just got word today the Pickering House Inn is number 4 in New England and number 12 in the United States by Travel and Leisure magazine. And thank you, because we've worked hard for that. But I'm going to say we had a writer staying at the inn Sunday night with plans that I was having breakfast with them Monday morning. Sunday night, I got a series of photographs from their cell phone with question marks. I couldn't sleep that night. I sat with Peter and said, how do I respond to this? So I went up for my breakfast at our inn, and I swayed the entire article off of the Pickering House Inn, off of Wolfeboro, because their questions to me again and again is, for such a quaint New England nice town, why does your waterfront look like this? Why are your lights like this? They ran down the list that all of us don't want to talk about, and I didn't know what to say. And it was a really bad time. So the sad thing is, I'm working to sway an article as far away from my inn and as far away from the town as I can, and we're transitioning it as best I can to how funky design translates to residential, and I'm making up all the stuff because I was tap dancing for 45 minutes having breakfast. But if I am getting that kind of feedback from a national travel writer who came here because she knew we were getting Travel and Leisure again, it was a nightmare, and it was embarrassing, and I was disgusted. So, that's it.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Tavish, you said that Barry is going to be meeting with the Board of Selectmen.
Well, I don't know if that's set to happen, but that was a recommendation of Town Manager Barry, Jason, and myself, yes.
Okay, if you could let us know, and John and I will, right, John? Yeah, right.
We did try to reach out to Barry at one point, and Kathy wrote him, but we never heard back from Barry, except for his comments that they were municipal and they weren't under the purview of the planning board. They were under the purview of the selectmen.
Well, that is the position of town council,
Yeah.
yes,
Oh,
but
oh.
that doesn't mean that needs to be the end of the discussion.
Oh, okay,
I
but,
mean, the impact at the planning board level is, given the number of parking lots in town that are illuminated by these lights, it's the same number of parking lots that would then be in front of the planning board to have, at whatever the cost, a lighting plan approved for their parking lots.
Well, I think what we're listening and hearing from our people in our town is they want us to enforce 100% fully cut-off shielded lighting, and they want us to enforce the wall packs that people just put up on the side of their buildings. They want to enforce the after 11 o'clock, your lights are on motion, they're shielded down, or they don't shine onto the other people's property because they're fully shielded cut-off lighting. I mean, that's what we've asked for the last 2 years, and we had the lighting committee. The voters approved it. We should be supporting the will of the voters.
so Tavis, if you could alert John and I so that we can go to that Board of Selectmen meeting and explain to them what the ordinance says, and that the town really should be paying attention to it. So if you could do that,
I can do
would be
that, yes.
great.
Yeah, the town should be abiding by the regulations.
That too. I have a business question about this, that you use the words rent. Someone is renting the light that's on the pole. They're paying for that light that's coming off the pole. There's got to be some sort of a paper trail that says who, what, where, when, and why, and how much. And I think that...
Yeah, I think that exists.
And I think that also could be, is there a stop date on that rental? Is there some
Well,
sort of...
that's the interesting balancing point, because if you, hypothetically, since Hunters is still on the screen, if all of a sudden a letter comes out from the town that says, "Dear municipal light renter, effective this date, these lights will no longer be here."
I think
that could really scare a lot of businesses.
It could,
I'm
but
not
it
saying
could
it's
also
wrong.
be...
It's just
It could be staggered, it could be staged, and it could take a couple of years. So it doesn't have to be overnight, but it's also something to think about from the town's aspect that, geez, we're way out of compliance, we've got to fix this, and this is how it's going to happen. It might not be fun, but this is how it's going to happen. You're going to have to stand up for yourselves, and we're going to work with you, but we can't keep doing this.
Any other comments? Go ahead, Peter.
One of the issues that we have here is that the LED lighting is so much more efficient than previous other kinds of lighting. You also find that the high-pressure sodium lighting was an orange light, and it tends to be, the LED tends to be a blue light. And it turns out that our eyes are much more susceptible to the blue than they are to the others. And so therefore, what we need to do is, if we're going to pass any regulations or look to how we deal with this, is we need to look to some of the technical specifications as to how the light impacts people. And it is, you know, if you ended up bringing in a similar wattage LED to what they had in the sodium vapor, it would be so bright, you know, it would light up everywhere. And so therefore, I think that if we're going to make any modifications to what we do, we need to make sure that we are doing this in a realistic way, which may mean that we reduce the wattage of those LED lights so that we can make them so that they're fine. Or perhaps what we need to do is also make it so that those lights are of a wavelength which is not going to be as bothersome to people. And I completely agree with you in that these things are too bright and they're not right. But you know, it is one of these things that we need to also look at some of those technical things, because the technology has changed from when those lights were put up long ago.
No. Okay, quickly.
I will, but I'm just going to say, to your point, the technology has changed tremendously. You're right. LED lights, the cheapest ones were the brightest ones or the creepiest ones. Between lumens and kelvins and all this stuff, it makes your head hurt. It's very complicated. But I guess my suggestion, and maybe I'll take this on, there's a number of towns that have transitioned to LED lighting that is not bright white lighting. More to the point, it is consistent throughout the town. That's part of the issue. And I guess I raise this, and I don't know this answer. The technology will continue to change. And so it is a hard thing to say, do we set the Kelvin lumen LED? It's way too technology for me. But to your point, but the other pieces, it's not just the light fixtures themselves, it's the inconsistency. And so as you drive around our town, it's not all of them are bright, or sort of bright or not bright. It's all varied, and it's because of the timing.
But as you say, it is associated with literally, in some ways, the change in color temperature.
Yes.
And
yes.
so that needs to be something that is dealt with.
And it's horrible to figure out.
It is not
I
easy.
have a 12,000 square foot house that I'm designing right now, and that's what we're going through. So it is. But towns are learning, and other towns have figured it out.
Yep.
So I think we can.
And so that's why the regulations need to be written associated with those kinds of issues.
Yes, because they're hard.
Okay.
Can I make a point?
Okay. Yes, you can.
So Peter, the point that the lighting committee tried to wrestle with was just what you described. We had a separate meeting just on the light spectrum and the benefits and the colors and so what we decided was, again, if it was shielded, the light wouldn't be in your face. And if it was off after 11 o'clock at night, the light wouldn't be in your house. So that's how we were able to be consistent, because there's so many variables with lights and the lumens and how bright and how they look. So if it's shielded and if it was off after 11 o'clock at night, people could enjoy their property and those problems would be addressed.
I will actually say that you had your meeting, your lighting meeting, a number of years ago. I mean, it was a committee that worked a few years ago. And I think that the technology has changed so that we need to pay attention to that as well as what you were doing. I mean, it should be dark sky compliant. I mean, that's a given. But there are also some other issues which I think we can add into a regulation so that people are using proper colors. And it turns out that the bluer colors are really bad for people who want to go and look at the stars. So even if they reflect off the ground, they go up into the sky. So we need to be talking about all the issues. I'm not saying that we need to go along with yours as well as perhaps some new things.
Yeah. So the issues that everybody really should be aware of is the health issues. There's medical studies out there that have a high concentration of breast cancer in women where the lights are on all night. It messes with the anxiety of youths, keeps them going. They become hooked on medicine. It causes high blood pressure in men. There are serious health effects to lighting to people's human body. Not to mention the rest of the insects and the rest of the people that want to go out there and enjoy the night sky and the critters and the rest of life that has to form their functions of life. So it's not an issue where you just move up from Massachusetts and you're scared to live in Wolfeboro, so you turn all the lights on your house and you light up all the backside of your house, because that's really what we're seeing, and we don't want that. I don't want that to happen to Wolfeboro.
Okay, well, maybe we should put that on our list to look at the lighting regulations and see if there's anything we could add.
Sure.
Yeah. Okay, all right, public comments? Anybody want to make any comments?
Thank you, Brody Deshays, Wolfeboro, New Hampshire. It was a tough evening, I could imagine. I wouldn't want to have sat in your seats, so bravo to all of you for making a tough decision. Just want to congratulate you on that. But I just want to talk about Mr. Breskin's comments and the statement you read before, which I really appreciated, which was some of the comments unrelated to the application that happened during the hearing, which I found, I wasn't going to say anything about any regarding the hearing, but I just felt, while most people's comments were in order, I felt as if some of the comments regarding the zoning board were a little bit unwarranted, especially from someone who serves in the municipal government and serves on that board. I have my own problems with the zoning board, and sometimes I agree with what they do, sometimes I don't agree with what they do. Same with planning, same with every board in this town, but I serve as a library trustee in Wolfeboro, I serve as a school board member in Governor Wentworth Regional School District. I'd never try to throw a board I serve on under the bus and say as if my board wasn't capable of handling a complex issue that needs to be, strongly considered and well thought out. So I felt as if those kinds of comments, going forward by the planning board should be gavelled out of order. Other than that, I had one question, which is about how a stop hold works, because I don't feel as if, too bad everyone left instead of watching the rest of the meeting and kind of figuring out how that process works. How does the Board of Selectmen get involved if they decide to get involved in the stop hold process? Or, if they don't, does it just automatically go to the ZBA? I think everyone kind of left and assumed, you guys approve the application, it's all done, and I think other people might have left and been like, well, there's still an open question, but I guess I'll read about it on Facebook. But I'd rather hear from you guys rather than secondhand on Facebook with 3 different opinions that are all the incorrect opinions on it.
You want to comment on that, Tavis?
Sure. The short version is that the legal advice to the planning board was that neither the planning board nor the zoning board of adjustment have the statutory authority to determine whether estoppel has or has not occurred. So what's going on in this case, and I don't want to go into the definition of estoppel, but there's basically 3 criteria that establish municipal estoppel. In layman's terms, if somebody comes in and asks a question and is given an answer, and then relies upon that answer to make a significant investment in the furtherance of a project, and then a same or different municipal entity makes a determination that is counter to the original determination upon which they replied, it's basically saying, go ahead, Brody, apply. Apply. Oops, sorry.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, you're out X number of thousands or hundreds of thousands, whatever you may have. That's municipal estoppel. Loosely paraphrased. I apologize for the attorneys and former attorneys in the room. So what the recommendation was is that the Board of Selectmen or a New Hampshire Court of Law do have, under the statute, the ability to determine if estoppel has or has not occurred.
So does the applicant have to go to the Board of Selectmen or go to the court to ask for that determination?
Because Wolfeboro is a small town. I shared with some of the selectmen that happened to be in the room. I said, could the selectmen have this at their next available meeting? And oh, by the by, here's what the planning board's council believes was or was not estoppel for them to consider in their deliberations. And I believe that will be addressed long before a building permit could be issued anyway.
Okay, so no one needs to approach the Board of Selectmen to ask them, they can just do it themselves?
Functionally, what's happening is I'll be likely having a conversation with the town manager tomorrow, putting together a memo, bullet points, by dates. Here's what happened, here's what was relied upon, here's what occurred, here's what the legal advice was, and then that will be put in front of the selectmen.
Okay, and it'll be on their agenda and everything, I assume?
Correct.
All right, thank you for clarifying that, and thank you for
thank you.
letting me provide input.
Okay. Anyone else? Okay, all right. We've got some minutes that we need to go through.
Oh, that's up to Kathy. One more.
Oh.
Just 1 second.
Go ahead. Kathy, there is another public comment, too.
Oh.
Okay, well, we can, is the public going to finish?
Go.
Is this like for an open?
No, go
Yes.
ahead.
My name is Sabette Stroman, and I was actually going to write this email with pictures attached and send it to the town manager, but it also applies to you guys. Last Saturday, I think it was Saturday, when we had the big concert in the park, the first one of the season, I took my family and we sat on a picnic blanket and looked to our right with trash spilling all over the sidewalk, or whatever that parking lot area is, from the big building that now has all the restaurants in it. And I don't know whether I feel like that's kind of within the planning board's purview, or going back to the issue of enforcement. It was incredibly unsightly, and I'm not kidding. I've got pictures that I'm happy to send to you guys that show trash all over around. And then we've got those 3 ugly tanks, and I'm not sure whatever was resolved about that. But I'd like to know the status of what is happening to protect the town and what we see from all of the trash and the tanks, and what's going on with that.
We did address it for the corner, what's the name of the one in Market 21? Yeah, we addressed the issue there. I'm not sure if they've complied.
They haven't complied.
Yeah,
I was there again yesterday looking at it, and it looked, well, I was there this weekend. It looked a little bit better on Sunday. I mean, I think one suggestion for the owner of that building is maybe, I get he's got a tight space, but maybe he could have a trash service come every single day. And if the trash service comes every day, it keeps the trash can lids down and keeps the trash off of the ground. But, you know, I hope that you guys can find a way to change how that looks, because it's incredibly unsightly, especially when we're having those wonderful concerts in the park.
Right.
Thank you.
Totally agree with you. Yep.
Sabette, I know firsthand that the town manager is well aware of the issue that you described. I know that some of the Board of Selectmen, and perhaps all of them, are aware of it as well. And I think it primarily comes down to, as you described it, an enforcement issue. There are ongoing efforts to improve the situation. I know that over the past 2 weeks it has improved somewhat, although it hasn't been resolved completely. Lastly, with regard to the screening of the propane tanks that are there, I know that's also an ongoing discussion with the building owner. I don't know the resolution of it.
Well, you know, just put some trees in front of it and send him a bill, or cut off his electricity or something. You know, just do something to get his attention. You guys have the ability to put teeth into some enforcement issues. Stop just letting him run the show. I don't know the guy, and I like his restaurant, but, you know, it's a beautiful town, and it's not worth having a wonderful restaurant that makes everything else around it look trashy. Put some teeth in it.
Okay, thank you. Okay, can we go on?
Say something.
Oh.
I just wanted to mention that...
Into the microphone, please. It's on, just speak into it.
Close and speak up.
Hello?
There you go.
Okay. Livia Nicolescu, recording secretary. So I just wanted to point out that the May 16th and the June 6th planning board draft minutes don't reflect Roger Murray's corrections, and so it's just maybe a matter of coordination with Tavis Terry to be sure that what's before you is the latest draft. And so if you could, if you'd like to approve these, if you could do that with the condition that all of Roger's corrections are picked up. And
I think it would be
June
safer
20th.
for the board to wait to act until the additions and corrections are made.
Yeah, right.
I think it's just a coordination issue and a distribution issue.
Yeah, right. It all
it's just
has
that.
to be done at the meeting, but I know he...
No, I think Libby's point is that we didn't get the latest version of the meeting, the minutes in our packet.
Right. For May 16th and June 6th, because the latest drafts reflect what corrections Roger asked for, and I think I caused some confusion, so I apologize
When
about
the
that.
packets are compiled, we print the latest posted version from the website for the packet. So if there were changes after the packets were together, that would explain the difference.
Okay, do we have any minutes that we can approve?
June 20th are fine.
Yeah, I believe the June 20th minutes are current.
Yeah, right. Okay, everybody had an opportunity to look at those minutes? Any corrections? Okay, I'll make a motion to approve the June 20th.
I have a couple of corrections.
Okay. I withdraw my motion. Yeah, go
Yes,
go ahead.
corrections?
Yeah, go ahead. I just withdrew my motion.
Well, on page 1, under applicant R. Beckwith, he said there are 2 garages. I don't think he said there were 2 garages.
No, there are not 2 garages.
On page, the bottom of page 3 and the top of page 4, my comments should be before the vote. After the motion, but before the vote. And on top of page 5, end of Paul's comments, I think it should be South Main Street, not North Main Street. And then under the non-binding recommendations, John, I believe, talked about green trim, not white trim.
Okay.
And those are my changes.
Okay, all
Is
right.
that right, John?
I have a correction on page 5, where it just says John Thurston, carry the town theme for the building materials such as brick and supposed to be green trim.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Paul Blanc is his name, not Blanca.
Okay, so Roger's corrections, and John, any other corrections? Okay, so I'll make a motion to approve the June 20th minutes with the corrections just indicated. Somebody want to second that?
I'll second it.
Thank you. Motion has been made and seconded. All in favor, please say
Aye.
Please say aye. Opposed? Okay, all right. Next, we have another meeting next week. It's a work session. We're going to be talking about the shorefront regulations, and among other things.
So can I make a comment to Sabette's point about the trash and the area?
Sure. Yep.
The town owns the property. I was thinking, why doesn't the town just build a fence in front of their deck area, and then it will be solved? If it's in the town's hands.
That's true.
All I can say to that right now is that we are looking at many different options. We're fully aware of the issues down there. We're as upset as anybody that spoke tonight about it, and anybody else sitting on this board, I'm sure. We're aware of it, and we are working at dealing with it.
Okay, thank you, Brad. Okay, anybody else have anything? John?
I have one question.
Okay.
What is Mr. Beckwith doing with the additional space now that he's withdrawn his application?
I haven't heard yet.
Well, he has a permit to do what?
Right now, he has a permit for a garage with storage above.
To have a duplex in that district, you need 21,780 square feet, and his lot is .17 something. So he can't put a duplex there.
Okay, anybody else have anything? Okay, so I'll make...
Motion to adjourn.
Second. All in favor, please say aye. Okay. Thank you very much, folks.